The Trials and Tribulations of an Engineer. Episode 2, Classroom Life. As I mentioned earlier, my college life as a mechanical engineering student was different from my life as a physics student. For one, my graduating class in physics was only 4 people strong. My class in my first year as a mechanical engineering student was over 20 people in size. It was here where I was to find out if all the stigmas that I had seen in TV shows and movies about engineers were true. I can honestly say that my class, for the most part, was devoid of the stereotypical tropes that sitcoms often portrayed. There was also a high amount of diversity between the genders. I was pleased to find out that close to half the class was with women. But, as the new guy, I had to find a way to interact with all my new classmates. Luckily for me, 3 of the females were curious about a transfer student who enrolled in their classes so late in the academic timeline. I was fortunate that they had invited me to eat with them at lunch, but I declined, because at the time, I had to catch up on new areas of studies now that my degree was switched from electrical to mechanical engineering. For one thing, there was a brand new class that I had to pass in the first 6 months, otherwise I once again would be held back 3 years. This class was solid mechanics. I spent my first 2 or 3 lunch periods studying for that class because I had to take it outside of normal class hours as a free study course. This meant that I studied for the class on my own time and then took an exam to show that I mastered the material. After the first week of studying during my lunchtime and the girls continued to invite me to eat with them, I relented and joined the soon-to-be large group of engineering friends. As it would turn out, engineering students were really nothing like the tropes that I was led to believe as a young man. In fact, in many ways, the engineering students were indistinguishable from any other young adults studying for any other major. And, don't tell them I said this, but, not all of them were necessarily smart in engineering. What I did come to notice was that, like in every other environment in life, there were cliques or circles of people, but in the end all the mechanical engineers stood together to help one another academically. One thing that you have to realize when you are in a 5-year dual degree program is that you don't get the luxury of free periods in the school day like many of your peers. Your days, by the very nature of the program, must be filled to the brim and often require extra summer classes to finish in the 5-year timeline. And heaven forbid that you don't pass a class, then your whole curriculum schedule can be offset by a year or more. For me, some of the extra classes that I had to take were the ones that first-year freshmen at engineering colleges had to take as prerequisites. This in essence allowed me to have interactions with more than the classmates from my junior year, but also freshmen and sophomore students as well. I found this to be advantageous because I was always a social person and I liked to get to know different people and hear their perspectives of the school. It was also during one of these freshman classes that I got to actually go to a shop class with heavy machinery. In New York City, where I am from, that type of class was not offered at my high school, and I lived in an apartment all my life up to that point, so having a bunch of tools or power tools was not something I was accustomed to using. It was very apparent which students were versed in using tools of all kinds, which almost made admitting that I had no idea how to use them intimidating. Luckily, these students were always happy to help and teach others how to use the equipment. For this class we had to learn to use electric saws, drills, power sanders and welders. If I remember correctly, we had to design a contraption to transfer blocks reliably from one place to another, and of the 5 teams that were made, there were an equal amount of different methods and designs used to accomplish the same goal. While I had mentioned earlier that the students didn't match the stereotype of an engineer, many of the teachers did. I am not quite sure why, but the stereotype of foreign engineering professors that barely speak the English language was real at my school. Some of these teachers' teaching style was so atrocious that it was often more advantageous if you just skipped class and read the textbook yourself. It was sometimes comical how the professors would go through how to solve a problem in class, then give the same problem on the test, and somehow, doing everything as was shown in class, gets the question wrong. This furthers my point of it sometimes being more beneficial to skip the class and study on your own. There were students who cheated by using their notes to try to pass the tests, but as you can imagine, since the solutions were taught wrong in the class, the notes were basically useless on a test. For some reason, the grad students who were teachers' assistants were also foreigners that had limited English speaking abilities and were of a limited help in assisting with problem solving. The classes that the teachers' assistants were observed mostly in were the laboratories. In these labs they were basically there to supervise the students while the teachers were off somewhere else doing I am not sure what. Their other main function was to grade homework and quizzes and tests. I found out later that some professors don't provide the solutions to the teachers' assistants, they expect them to figure out the solutions themselves and then to grade the course. This may explain why there seemed to be a disconnect between what is taught in class and what got graded on homework assignments. In the next episode I will go over the different classes you may take if you choose to be a mechanical engineer, what they are about and what is involved in passing the class.